Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, of course. I'm here. So Ohio has, and I'm proud of this. I'm on the State Parks Foundation of Ohio. We are the number one ranked parks in the entire country in
Oh,
Ohio. So I am in one of our great state parks. That's why I have this interesting backdrop behind me. But good to be with you.
that's if you had asked me to name the top state park states, I probably would not have thought of Ohio. So
Number
clearly,
one.
I need to learn more about Ohio
Yeah,
and spend some time there.
yeah.
Great.
When I
And
used to
parks
be
are
a
still open?
candidate, when I was a candidate for office, I would when I was doing long trips around this Ohio, and you're working really hard, I'd stay in state parks because it'd be such a relaxing way between events. So that's sort of been my habit for a long time.
Oh, nice. And you are, first of all, let me pause for a moment. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Lisa Senecal with Lincoln Square, and I am here joined as I am every Thursday by David Pepper of the Pepperspectives Substack, as well as many books and appearances everywhere. You're and Cincinnati Magazine.
Yeah,
Waiting for that link to go live because
yeah.
everyone should read the great piece on David. So thank you, David, for being here.
Of course, good to be with you.
Um, you were up bright and early this morning and out of your house. And I know that because you have already created a video that you have up on your Substack.
Yeah,
Um, and when I watched it, you were standing uh, outside and then in a bus
right.
because there are a bunch of people headed to the State House today in Columbus to have a very democratic, activist,
Yes.
positive conversation with their representatives. Can you tell us who these folks are and
Sure.
why
Well,
they're
first of all,
doing this?
just not to correct you, but it was yesterday.
I'm sorry, yesterday.
Yesterday. But I did this, we have had, and just this is a small example of what we have to do. The solution to so much of what we face is people power. And so much of the worst things happening in our country are happening in places like the Ohio State House, where they just assume no one's going to show up. No one is paying attention. This is one, I call them laboratories of autocracy. And one of the secrets is so much of America's dirty work and extremism happens there because they don't think anyone's watching. So this is just one example, but they have been absolutely screwing over teachers and retirees in Ohio for several years now who have been voting in their own pension board elections for transparency, but and demanding answers because they didn't get cost of living adjustments. And when they finally earned the majority of their pension board, the politicians at a 1 a.m. budget hearing added a provision that stripped away most of the elected seats of their pension and gave it to political appointees in a state with the most corruption in America that often is tied to those appointees. It was one of the most egregious things I've ever seen. And they did it because they were scared of retirees and teachers coming to the state house and opposing it. They did it so badly that it was found a few weeks ago to have violated the Ohio Constitution. So I went yesterday to celebrate the teachers and retirees getting on buses around the state to get to that state house and to start the process of frankly raising hell about how they've been treated. So this was just the first step, but I thought amid all the bad stuff, it's worthy of celebration. And a lot of the teachers, I got feedback later, most of them had never been to the state house before, just as the state politicians want, and they got a feel for it. And their comments were, we're coming back and we're bringing more people and we're going to stand up. Because all these decisions, I mean, whether it's food banks, whether it's healthcare, whether it's pensions, it's impacting everyday people. And if the everyday people get together, like teachers, there are 500,000 retirees in this pension system. That's a force. You win an election in Ohio with 2 million votes. 500,000 changes everything. So we just need to begin processes like this. And this is why I went to the bus. I checked in with them all day. I wasn't able to go there because I teach my class on Wednesdays. But it was just a great example of what we have to start doing on so many things. People showing up at protests and at state house hearings and starting to make politicians think, whoa, they're paying attention now. And again, what was done here to these teachers and retirees is that one of the most egregious things I've ever seen. Stripping away their majority voice on their own pension board and doing it at 1 a.m. not having a single hearing on it, passing it so they never had a say. Well, they're going to get their say. And my hope is, and I'll keep encouraging it, that over and over again, we get bigger and bigger groups to Columbus to make the politicians finally listen to the people who elect them.
And you mentioned that there has been a Supreme Court ruling, Ohio Supreme Court, that what was done was not.
It was a lower court ruling.
Lower court. Okay.
And I want the Supreme Court of Ohio to know that if they rule against this group, and it's such a clear-cut violation, they will have 500,000 people paying attention.
And they need to be, even if that ruling goes in their favor, to start building now, because we know that the Supreme Court, unfortunately, in Ohio, might have the last legal say, but it doesn't have the last say in how the politicians actually conduct themselves, because they are way too comfortable ignoring judicial rulings.
Yes. And in our case, I hate to say it, the same special interests that convinced the State House to do this also influenced the Ohio Supreme Court. So we need, in the way to change things, and this, I hope, is the story next week in Virginia, and it's got to be the story 26, is that people figure out you're cutting SNAP, you're raising health care, you're stealing our voice over our pension, enough. And people need to rise up. And yesterday was it's a small example, but it's better than the day before where people weren't at the State House. We've got to keep building and building and building on Election Day, but also hearings, direct calls to legislators, all of it. Because that's basically the main power we have left in this really screwed up world we're in.
You mentioned SNAP, and we need to talk about that because we are a couple days away from 42 million people in the United States losing their SNAP benefits unless enough pressure can be put on the Trump administration to do the right thing and actually use the taxpayer money that they already have in contingency funds and free that up so that people don't need to start going hungry at the beginning of November.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is a tactic that entities that do this are Hezbollah and Cuba in the Castro years, and any North Korea, former Soviet Union, right?
Starving people,
He who controls the bread controls the masses. This has gone back to Roman times, where they use this to control the population. And Trump and his minions clearly see something like SNAP as a way to both try to hurt the Democrats who are standing up to make sure people don't end up losing their health care because they can no longer afford it, but to also try to punish the Democrats by keeping food out of the mouths of hungry children.
Yeah. No, it's sick. It's cruel. I mean, it's dangerous. So I mentioned to you, I'm doing sort of listening sessions around the state as I helped a woman running, Amy Acton, for governor. And last night we were in a place called Steubenville, which is both an old sort of city, but also very rural around it. And they were saying the lines for the food bank are already long. The demand is already huge. Imagine what happens. And the numbers they shared were in terms of the increase were stunning. Imagine what happens with a cutoff in a couple days, how much worse it gets at those food banks. And again, I saw a few people do this last night. The argument is literally, unless you, what is it? We don't want to reduce health care. Let me try to think this through. I'm confusing myself here. The entire point is to keep to allow the government to open to increase health prices. So unless we will, well, I'm sorry, I'm getting lost in my own thinking, but like they are doing two things at once. You don't get to eat, or we reduce your benefits. At the same time, we literally want to open up government in order to raise your health prices. So the idea that they are just playing with people's well-being at a time where we already have people struggling on all these costs is crazy. And to have it be a bargaining chip, and again, clearly, they have used funds in the past during shutdowns to pay for food stamp, to pay for SNAP. This is an intentional decision to deprive. The money is there, the precedent is there. There's nothing wrong legally. This is an intentional decision to try and wedge against Democrats. But I think it will backfire because I think, as you're describing, it's just so cruel. But they literally are doing it in order to raise health prices. I mean, that's absolutely the most twisted plot you can imagine.
Yeah, and this seems like it can be such a win for Republicans to agree. They can take credit for all sorts of things if they just do the right thing
Yeah.
here. And Democrats are going to get some credit if they end up forcing the Republicans to extend the subsidies for the folks who are in the health exchanges. Yeah, Democrats are going to get some of that, but Republicans will too. And right now, they're not going to be out there being able to say, we are for the working people. We are the party of the working people, when people forget that a huge percentage of people who receive SNAP benefits or are getting supplements to help them pay for their ACA premiums are working people.
Right.
These are not people who don't have jobs. These are people who are working 2, 3, 4 jobs, and it's still not meeting their basic needs. And that is not their fault.
Yeah.
That is why we have
No,
social
it's our
safety.
economy. Yeah, our economy there's so many people who are working, just like you say, working very hard, and they still need this to get by. My hope and guess is the best way we will head off a cutoff in a couple of days are the lawsuits that Democratic governors and attorneys general have filed. Like, I don't know what happens at all. These cases always get screwed up at the Supreme Court level, but we are seeing a lot of district court wins. I haven't studied the suits, so I don't want to over predict, but I think more than a solution in Washington. I mean, they don't want to bring back the House because they're afraid of the Epstein file. Let's be very clear. So it's either going to be Trump doing and again, the opportunity for Trump is to look good. Oh, I'm going to open it up after all. Now, he's the only reason it was ever threatened, not to be paid, but he could do it. And but I think the lawsuits may be the most likely way that this will get at least the very near term crisis of tomorrow and Saturday, being averted. We'll see. But those suits, we've seen a lot of district courts step in, and the hope is, at least for this, that does happen. I also want to give credit. There are a lot of state governors who are working very hard. It's just mainly the Democrats, but my guess is there's some Republicans working incredibly hard to use their own state funds to provide temporary relief. In Ohio Democrats are calling on the state governor to do that. That hasn't happened yet, but I know Jared Polis in Colorado, Hochul in New York, other governors are actually using state funds to try and bridge the gap. But that if that works, it'll only work for a short time. But I appreciate how many people are saying, forget the politics. We just need to help people. And so we're moving forward on these creative solutions right now.
Yep. I was listening to a report yesterday here in Vermont. We have Phil Scott, our Republican governor, who is frantically working with the Democrats in the state to free up $6 to $7 million of state funds to make sure that people in Vermont are not going to go hungry if we can't get the feds to do the right thing and free up these funds and keep people fed.
Right.
You mentioned Amy Acton, who is running for governor of Ohio. I had the pleasure of meeting her at the convention last fall. You introduced me to her. And since then, I have been following her. She's not just an incredibly impressive person. She's a really incredibly desirable candidate in a state like Ohio. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? And there's some, Democratic primary. Would be.
No, I mean, you saw I weighed in the other day. It would be truly an act of sort of sabotage to primary someone who has the highest job approval rating in the state of Ohio in her work as health director, plus 10. No one else is even close. has been largely tied or ahead in the polls. There was one outlier poll, but the one poll we know of has her up one against Vivek Ramaswamy. Again, this guy's been on Fox News for years. He ran for president. She's never run for anything but student council. Despite all that, not a dollar spent on TV. She's tied. She's up 19 with independents. And if you watch her, if you follow her, by the way, she started a Substack recently, so you can find her there. But if you go to Amy Acton on Instagram, she's got a big following. You'll see why. It's very rare in politics that you get very well known, but in a less political way. That just doesn't happen. I mean, the best example I give you in Ohio is John Glenn. He was famous because of something beyond politics. That's very hard to do. But it's an amazing way to enter, especially at a time where people are tired of politicians. And so against a Vivek Ramaswamy would love to run against a career politician. That's like the greatest campaign ever. But against Vivek Ramaswamy, this less partisan feel. But people in Ohio, just so folks know, she led the way during COVID with the Republican governor, was very well respected. That's where the +10 job approval comes from. Against Vivek, it's like the perfect matchup. A doctor who's trusted, balances a ticket very well. Women are going to determine so much of the outcome of the 26th election in suburbs, kind of in the middle. She is the perfect candidate for that. So she's very well positioned. Every poll shows it. She shows up to events in rural Ohio, urban Ohio, whatever. Big crowds of people who line up for an hour to talk to her because of the role she played in their life. That's very rare. So yeah, I mean, my attitude as Democrats is, hey guys, take the win. This doesn't happen very often. Let's not get ourselves caught up in one, just going back to the same candidates we always run, and two, a primary that means we're not focused on Vivek Ramaswamy, but on eating each other alive. I wouldn't always say that. Primaries can be helpful, but it's very late. This is November. Governor races are 2-year terms, 2-year cycles. You should start in anyone who wants to run for office, my best advice is start early. If you're running statewide, start 2 years early. That's a 2-year cycle. So last-minute primaries basically are just kind of sabotaging things as opposed to being helpful. If you're serious about an office, you start early so you can do the listening sessions we're doing. You can do all the work. And so, yeah, I hope it doesn't happen. We'll see. But we in Ohio, between Sherrod Brown and Amy Acton, that's the best ticket we have had in the state in 20 years. And in a year like 26, which is a midterm maybe in our direction, that's how you flip the state of Ohio. So, if anyone wants to learn more, go to her Substack, and I certainly post every once in a while on that race.
Yeah, there aren't very many people who can come forward and talk about the bipartisanship that they have participated in who are
Right.
non-politicians. And
Yeah.
she has that because she did work so closely with the governor
Mm-hmm.
during COVID. And I have all sorts of problems with your current governor and
Right.
his ethics and policy positions and all of that. But during COVID, he behaved like a normal human being and
Yes.
not a politician. And he and Amy Acton together did the right thing
Yeah.
for the state of Ohio and the people of Ohio.
Yes.
And so
And you know what? He won by 25 points because of it. The broad cross-section of Ohio, because of that, more than any other issue, said, okay, we were just like, again, people bring up COVID. Well, isn't COVID a negative? Ask Andy Beshear. He won by more. Ask Gretchen Whitmer. Mike DeWine won by 25. And especially at a time where RFK is scaring people again, being a responsible leader in crises turns out to be a really good thing as a contrast to the chaos and worries that you get from DC and people like RFK. So people have been rewarded who were good leaders there. And so one of the false narratives about, oh, well, if she was during COVID, I'm like, that's why she's a +10. People actually respected it. We actually did. So there was some polling done asking negative questions about what Vivek Ramaswamy will say about COVID. The least effective attack on Amy Acton was talking about COVID because people think she did a good job. The much more effective attack is just bringing up Democratic brand stuff. which she's not. She's kind of,
Right.
she's Democrat,
would work very well against Tim Ryan.
right. It would work very well against anybody. Like if you've been I mean, the bad news is if you've been a 20-year Democratic politician in Washington, the attacks that are most effective will stick to you. If you haven't been a politician, they'll try them, but it's harder to stick them to you because you haven't voted on all those things or done other things. So her brand is better than the Democratic brand. Why would you ever switch the better brand for the more susceptible? It just doesn't make sense.
Right.
So
And to
hopefully,
be clear, I think Tim Ryan is a lovely human being.
yeah,
I think he is a good person who would do good things in office. But we are at a point right now where all of us and whatever it is we think we can contribute or whatever our ambitions might be, that all has to be set aside for a very cold, hard look
yes,
at who is the most electable.
right,
And that's the person we go with right now. And that's
yes,
where we put our votes because
yes,
it's all on the line.
yeah. And you don't do things that help the other side. And in this case, a primary that you enter in November, December, whatever, where you just start hitting each other. I mean, if you're Vivek Ramaswamy of the Ohio Republican Party, you're thrilled. It's the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
Why would you ever inflict that on the side that needs to win and has a chance to win? That's our best chance in a long time.
Right. And right now she has the war chest that she's building up that
Yep.
she will be able to use to campaign for the job and against Vivek Ramaswamy. He's a millionaire. He can self-fund, and he also has ties to all sorts of unsavory folks who are going to pour money into PACs and all of that to support his campaign. So, God, don't bleed this woman dry of her campaign cash.
Right.
Fighting amongst another Democrat, and then you go into the general and you're starting with nothing.
Yeah.
So
it would be terrible.
Yeah. Good news. Talk about Indiana.
Yeah, there's so the good news is, and you saw this the other day, it looks like Indiana Republicans, for a very surprising reason in a way, Mike Pence is lobbying, and I think some of them, their instinct was already that they were turned off by Trump trying to get them to gerrymander Indiana. Some of those legislators, I was told a month ago, were kind of honked off by the Vance visit, the Trump calls. They're sort of reacting like Raffensperger did in Georgia, or like that Rusty guy, whatever his last name was, in Arizona.
Yeah. They
already weren't happy, but Trump is strong-arming the governor. He called a special session the other day. I was told they are well short of the votes they need in the Indiana Senate to get the gerrymandered map passed. And again, this would be 2 seats. This would be the last 2 seats. And a friend of mine who I interviewed, named Mary Noon, she's an activist, said it's weird they're calling special session because everybody knows they don't have a vote. They don't have the votes. Well, just now I was told they've canceled the special session. So they're on the ropes. And what's good is the polling is very clear that it's one of these typical, 35% support the map, 55% oppose what they're doing. The activists in Indiana, and I created a link on this, they're doing phone banks all the time. But what's really good here is, and this is what you like to see, you've got, obviously, I would call them fair maps folks who are League of Women Voters and people more in the middle. You got progressives, and you have Mitch Daniels, the former governor of Indiana, and Mike Pence making calls to Republicans saying, this is not who we are. We're not going to just do Trump's bidding. So it's a very good news story where, again, it's not just Democrats holding the line, but it's enough Republicans that it may make a difference. Now, we've all gotten our hopes up before. So when I say all this, could it flip? Yeah. And I said to Mary the other day, this would not only be a great story in that 2 seats aren't stolen, but if there is a moment where a state that's pretty red says, and could do it, says we're not doing it, that would be bigger than just 2 seats. That would be, I think, a very important moment that someone is saying, and this is what Mary would say, they would, we're Hoosiers, we don't do this. We don't do this. And this is a state that's quite red, quite gerrymandered. So a win here would be significant as a symbolic standing up to Trump. And again, I don't want to speak like I know exactly what they're doing, but if what she told me is true, like good for Mike Pence, good for Mitch Daniels, whoever's working with them to work the right, the sort of the responsible right side, saying, guys, this isn't what we do. Wonderful. I love that they're doing that. And so again, they were going to have a big rally at the State House on Monday. That's a special session. But and as we said, Nancy Pelosi would never call a meeting unless she had the votes. They did call a meeting without the votes, and I think the cancellation of that meeting makes clear the votes weren't moving their way. One of the undecided, I put a list of all the undecideds, and I just got a text that one of them he was undecided. He is now emailing people who email him, I am now a no vote. So we gained another one. So I think there's really good news there, and it's thanks to activism, but also, which has been great. Remember, when Vance showed up to that state house a couple months ago, he was met by a huge crowd of protesters. That matters. So the activism matters, but having this sort of the Mike Pence style Republican voice, and we have some of those in Ohio, is also, I think, very, very important.
Yeah, and hopefully, when people see it, it kind of is boggles the mind at moments, but Mike Pence has stood up before, as we saw on
Yeah.
January 6th. So
Yeah.
good for him that he just hasn't kind of faded into the shadows and decided that, I can have a nicer life if I just stop weighing in on any of this stuff. I can go sit on some boards and make lots of money.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, if they go from standing up on January 6th, although obviously it should have been the easiest thing ever, sadly it's not. But to start having people stand up on gerrymandering, which is a more hidden assault on democracy, and my hope is amid all the states doing it that we all figure out. And I'm glad we're seeing a pushback against Texas. We need that, but at some point the hope is that everyone just finally says enough. No one gerrymander anywhere. Legislation in the House, in the Congress, end it. The Supreme Court, constitutional amendments, whatever it is, no state should be doing it. Right now, there is fire being fought with fire. That's appropriate. But overall, the whole thing is just so unseemly and not democratic.
right. And it is fire being fought with fire. Democrats in different states are, California is about to vote, and work is being done in other states. But there was the Democrats did have consensus on actually passing legislation
Yes.
before this latest round of gerrymandering happened to end gerrymandering.
Yes.
And
Everywhere.
I
And
think
and there
Republicans
was
now want to
filibustered.
say,
Yes.
you know, well, Democrats are doing it too. Well, they wouldn't have been. We didn't
Correct.
have to be here. But
There's no both sides to it. In Congress, there was a bill. It passed, and they filibustered it. They wouldn't support it. There was a Supreme Court decision. The 4 Democratic appointed justices, if they had one more vote, would have banned partisan gerrymandering across the country. So there's no both sides here. Now people are fighting fire with fire, but let's all agree after this. My hope is maybe some of the Republicans in California who aren't going to be happy about what's about to happen and may lose some seats, that they join Democrats in Congress and say, none of us should do this anymore. Let's end it. That's the hope.
well, I hope that's what happens. David, thank you for, again, helping us end on a positive note. There's good stuff happening out there. There's activism happening out there. I love the teachers going to the State House. We can all be doing these kinds of things, and it's small acts. It's organizing with groups that you're a part of, or having these conversations in communities or within your family, and just making sure that people constantly understand what the stakes are, and that they have the power to be
Yep.
a part of fixing this. Nothing is a foregone conclusion. We are far from done.
Absolutely.
And yeah, a lot of good is happening. So thank you, David, for everything
Of
you do
course.
to contribute to that. You're a force, and we really appreciate you coming and talking with us every week.
Thanks so much. Take care, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.
Yeah. Bye.